Welcome to the Techops show. In this episode, we take a deep dive into our origin stories, unmasking some of the exciting events and challenges that we encountered in becoming mechatronics engineers. We take a deep dive into the various courses and how they fed into the technology stacks that we later came to work with. We unmask some of the differences between taking a pure engineering stream versus doing a computer science route. But more importantly, we take you through a journey of the different psychological, social, and intellectual challenges that one goes through, from understanding completely nothing about technology and programming to later being able to build successful professional careers. Hope you gain a lot of insight in this episode, and we'll catch you in the next one.
And we live.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yes, we are live. And so I guess one of the interesting things to always unpack is the journey of how one becomes a software engineer.
Let's see. Where do I start? Should I start? Yeah, sure. Why not? Okay, so let me track back, put my thoughts together, trying to be coherent, not be all over the place. Anyway, so my journey, software, my journey. There's what I normally talk about in presentations, and what I normally just talk about with people, normal people.
How about the truth?
Yeah. No, there's always an origin story, right? And then my origin story is a bit long and short at the same time. So now I'm trying to think about where should I actually start. Because I can start, okay, let me start from my beginning. Cool. So everything else started, I guess, because just to give context and everything. So let me start from the beginning. So everything started from before varsity, trying to get into the university space. So back then, what I wanted to do is I wanted to do chemical engineering. As I go on grade 10, grade 11, etc., I get to, I guess we do those whole thing, the open days. You go to different open days for different varsities. Pretty much you go there and then you get exposed to different faculties and disciplines. So I went to one of the open days for TUT, right? So when I got there...
Actually, how was TUT back then? Here we're talking 08.
Is it 8? No, it was... Actually, I don't know.
Personally,
807.
I think it was cool, man. I saw Mechatronics on their presentation.
That was my first time encountering
so
that.
that's the first time you heard about Mechatronics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got there. So cool. Went with a school bus, get there, and then in my head, I'm like, I need to do chemical engineering. Why I want chemical engineering? Because it was, for me, it was the baddest engineering you can do, right? And then also my brothers did something in that realm, metallurgy and chemical engineering, etc. Cool. I wanted to do that. It was the cool thing to do, or there was the hardcore engineering thing to do. Cool. Get there. I went to all the stalls, career fairs and whatnot, but then I was like, now I need to go to the chemical engineering one, because that's why I'm here actually. So I went there, go to the stall. I got bored for shit. I literally just got bored.
Yeah,
they were talking about
is boring actually.
Poly, whatnot. So obviously, I was doing physics and chemistry, right? So with that, I expected to see those kind of stuff in there. When I get there, all nice and happy, and trying to ask them about those kind of questions, and things that I've seen in textbooks about chemical engineering. No, they were just no. I was like, no, this is boring for me. Then I was busy walking around again. Then boom, robots, they going up and down. I don't remember what the robots were doing, but then there was something fascinating about those robots. And then from there, I was like, okay, this is actually what I want to do. Then I asked, what is this? They're like, no, this is a discipline called Mechatronics and whatnot. Cool. Then from that on, that was my first encounter with the whole concept of Mechatronics. And then there's other aspects of it, obviously, watching those fighting cars. There's a show.
Yes,
back in
there used
the
to be
day.
a show where
Yes.
the robots would like fight
There you
each
go,
other.
with fires
What was it
and-
called again?
Forgot the name.
Metal Gear or something.
Something
or
like that.
someone was like,
Yes.
yeah.
I used to watch that a lot. And also I used to watch Metabot. No, for
Yeah,
What?
Metabot.
Metabot, yes. I used to love that. Cool. And then, okay, that was the thing. Then after that, got home. Obviously, because of my standards, I wanted to do mechatronics, but then not at TUT. So now I'm thinking, where else do they offer mechatronics? And then I looked around, boom, UCT is the only one that offers mechatronics, which is on a good space. The other one is a TUT. There was only TUT and mechatronics at that
And
time.
At
Nelson
that time,
Mandela.
yeah.
At that time.
Later
that
on,
year,
Nelson and I think
added.
Stellenbosch.
Because I started before you,
Yes.
Nelson Mandela was also doing, because they accepted me for mechatronics.
Interesting.
Into
Is it also for B-Eng or
Seven.
B-Tech?
it was the only B-Eng. You know, Nelson Mandela, it's actually more like your TUT type of
University of
you get
Technology.
national diploma, right?
Yeah, probably that's why I didn't even
But-
look at it.
But they only the B-Tech, it's not a B-Tech, B-Eng,
Yeah, it's the only
equivalent
B-Eng,
to equivalent
degree
to
that's-
Stellenbosch. It was the only degree in engineering. Others were like national diploma in electrical
Okay.
engineering, but it was B-Eng in mechatronics. I think it was in conjunction with the car manufacturing companies in PE.
Sure.
So
Okay,
yeah,
it makes sense. And I think Stellenbosch, I think, were also offering mechatronics.
yeah, B-Eng.
Yeah, but I remember Stellenbosch at that time, it was like,
Reputations.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think
the language was the main one also too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we were undergrad UCT, I actually came to respect the mechatronics at Stellenbosch because they had their own department, whereas we were like sitting into electrical engineering.
Well, yeah, I guess, but we'll get into that. You know, so you discovered
yeah.
UCT's mechatronics.
Yes. So it was like somehow I've always been arrogant. Yeah, because I'm thinking now, like I didn't want to go to I didn't even apply. I was just like, okay, what's the best way out here? What's the facility that offers mechatronics? The best one in South Africa. Then that's where UCT come in. Then I only applied to UCT for that mechatronics, and my next thing that I applied to it's UP for I think probably electrical, and then or mechanical, one of the two, and then I applied to VET for electrical. Cool. So UP didn't even like reply to me. Didn't even say anything. Cool.
Really?
Nope. Nothing.
100% for maths. No replies.
No reply. No,
Wow.
remember that was after graduation.
Or you applied
Oh.
before you
Yes.
write the final exam
Yes.
for matric.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yes, because back then
You apply
we
there
actually used to
and
get accepted. You know,
Before that.
before yeah.
Yep. So okay, cool. They didn't reply. Oh, wait, is that how they didn't reply or they rejected? Actually, I think they rejected. Yes, they rejected me. Cool. Yes. So
Ooh,
they.
you got rejection so early in life.
Yeah.
My God.
Oh well. So UP rejected me, and then VET is another interesting story. What happened there, and then UCT as well. Another. Okay, let me get into the UCT one. So the UCT one, what we did there, I think I applied the day of closing. Remember, back in the day, it wasn't online; it was through post.
You had to
If come to
send
think
the
of
letter.
it,
Yeah,
yes.
I actually remember.
Yeah, if you apply, if you send it on the day, definitely it's not gonna come. It's not gonna arrive on the day. So how I got to UCT, no idea.
I think they take the stamp when you go into the what you
Yeah,
call
the
this
day of sending
post
it.
office.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's the date of.
Cool. So I got in. So okay, cool. That went through, and then go to UCT. I had to call them multiple times. I think they only replied to me or gave me anything to think about around Jan. throughout the whole December. Didn't know
Wow.
where I'm at.
So only in Jan you found out.
Yes, I need to go to UCT.
That's deep.
Then I had like a couple of weeks to prep and then get everything and then go. So if I remember, even if I didn't call them, they didn't have a way to reply to me, to tell me you were accepted. I had to continuously call them and say, what's the result? What's the result?
Wow.
What's the result? Wait, come to think of it, how do they give you feedback?
No, there was actually, they did have an online thing. You know,
Yeah.
open access thing.
Okay,
Open access was
yes.
actually live.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, I remember I was checking online and
I was continuously calling.
For me, I received some couple of letters back from them.
Now I only received the letter when I was in UCT. My mom said, "Oh, I have your letter here of acceptance."
oh, wow.
Or for you, it's different because mine, I had to take a gap year that year.
Yeah,
Figure out some shit, bro.
You took a gap year.
No,
became a teacher and stuff.
no. What happened was, unlike you, Bongs, I was not applying during my matric because they always wanted some application fee, 135 or some shit like that. I never had that.
So UCT used to be the lowest.
Yeah,
The
they're actually
reason
the
why I-
cheapest. That was actually
Yes.
the interesting thing.
That's
yeah.
the reason why I applied to UCT. It was the
Ah.
cheapest.
Okay.
Vert was most expensive.
No, it was expensive. It was 200 and something, and then UCT was like $100.
By the
It's
way,
always been $100. I
Yeah.
don't think it has changed.
Yeah.
By the way, during that period, for me, my entire matric, I went through it thinking I'm going to TUT next year. Because when I was doing grade 11, you know, like your journey, I had some interest in life. Like I was always into robotics, but from the movies point of view, I never knew there was a career in robotics or something like that.
Okay.
The closest one was electrical. I was jumping between electrical and electronics. Sometimes maybe mechanical, but driving back to electrical and electronics, you know, that's my gen grade 7, 8, 9. When I went to grade 11, there was this, Sasol used to host what they called exhibitions. So they would invite many different universities to kind of do the open day thing, but now plus other companies there. So to make tech something like, so we go there, I come across the TUT stand. Dude, I saw robotics. And I
So
was
both
like,
of you all have a common entry point to mechatronics, the TUT stand.
Yep.
That's
Big
the-
ups to TUT.
yeah, yeah. So I saw these things. I saw these robotics. They were showing robotic arms. Not you know your standard robotic arms.
Sure.
I've already known about them, but they had a scaled model. And I asked about this, and they said mechatronics. I started taking a couple of their pamphlets. I knew from that day onwards what I wanted to do, and I've always brought it up in matric. What do you want to do as like mechatronics? What is this? And funny enough, when I was doing grade 12, there were a bunch of guys who are working at Sasol, right? Were engineers,
Yeah.
electrical and mechanical engineers. These guys, I tell them what I want to do. They never heard of mechatronics engineering at the time when they were in varsity, I guess.
Yeah.
So for me, throughout that year, bruh, I'm in this mind. I'm going to TUT next year. So luckily I had this other two guys, which were like, it's a long story around those two guys, but
Sure.
I used to go to them for some advice, right? So I go through thinking that I'm going to do mechatronics. Come next year, after matric, I get my results. Now I need to apply. I go to these guys because they had access to internet. I didn't have access to internet. Now I'm looking for schools, right? I'm thinking I'm going to apply for TUT. I'm going to them with TUT.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, I have I go there with the mentality that, okay, guys, can you please help me fill this and whatever. These guys look at my matric results. They're like, no, man, you can't go do national diploma while you have those results. I'm like, oh, what is the difference? And they started explaining these things, and I'm like, what else can I do? You know? We started checking around for mechatronics. Nelson Mandela comes up, NMMU comes up. We apply online there. You know, I call them, like we applied on Monday. I think on Thursday I call. They reply and say, hey man, you have to be in PE, I think, next week Tuesday.
Shucks.
The fuck?
What?
Which month of when was this in the year?
This is Jan, bro.
This is
January.
Jan. Wow.
I just got my
Yeah.
results now. I'm thinking. Sorry, that one was Feb.
Fair.
With the
Okay, now
result one.
that's definitely like you're in the
Yeah.
academic year to some degree.
And I'm like, you know, when you're not prepped mentally, especially to go those distances.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, fuck, I'm not gonna do this. I already know this is not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Financially, it's not possible,
Mhm.
and I don't know where I'm going there. It's not like somebody's gonna take me there and kind of assist and whatever. So I just kind of convinced those two guys that, you know what, I'll take a gap year and figure things out. Now I know I'm accepted at NMU, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's a given. So I just have to reapply. Next year I'll be accepted. I know that's a given. So along the way, I find out UCT has this thing. And there was a time when I was undergrad, a guy from UCT came to tutor at my school.
Okay.
The guy had some attitude that I didn't like. You know, when you're a township guy and then this guy comes and behaves slightly, looking better. You know, that judgment that you feel like, I don't think I'll fit in there. So I kind of...
UCT arrogant attitude.
Yeah,
Yes.
I kind of classified
Alleged.
UCT as no-go.
Okay.
Never investigated anything with it and whatever. So during that gap year period, I was teaching at Abed now and some high schools. So I normally visit those two other guys again. Then we kind of try to figure out what's what. Then UCT has it, and these guys are like, dude, you have to apply there. It's the best university. Like, how do you know it's the best? Like, how do you judge that? I couldn't understand a lot of things at the time. So these guys are like, okay, I'm still applying to Nelson Mandela because my mind is down there,
Yeah. It's guaranteed.
Yeah. So I apply. A week later, a letter comes back from UCT. I've applied to Nelson Mandela before.
Yeah.
Not before last year. Like, I've already applied for next year now.
Okay.
I applied to UCT. A letter replying comes back. We've received your application. Nothing came back from Nelson Mandela yet. Okay, sharp. A couple of weeks. This is a week's period. A couple of weeks. A letter comes back. You are accepted into Mechatronics program. Okay. Nothing from Nelson Mandela. A couple of weeks back. You are accepted in residence. Okay. So what?
It's a done deal. Which race we accepted in?
Rochester.
Rochester. All right.
Nelson Mandela comes back and say, your application is under review. I never even
No.
Dude, within, I think, a space of 2 months that year, I knew I was going to UCT. I have a residence. I have a finance. All my studies will be financed. So,
Wow. My finance story is slightly different because obviously then, as I mentioned, I applied to only those 3 universities, UP, UCT, and VET. UP rejected me, cool. VET accepted me, but then I think it was electrical. Yes, for electrical. And then UCT only accepted me a bit later, but then eventually they did. So once they do, now I have 2. I have VET and UCT. So when we did the whole application thing, the bursary thing, so my school, because I was one of the top students there for under the maths stream, or the science stream, so it was me and a friend of mine called Gabez. They applied for us. I think they used to do that at ESCOM when it was back then when it was corrupt. Yeah, no. Back then they didn't care. They just needed to get as many.
Get the numbers. I remember when you, even in first or second year, you had an ESCOM person come and just ask people who needs bursaries.
There you go. So they did that. So we said, like, pretty much it was during, was it December? No, somewhere January, before we went to school, before we went to actual university. Me and my friend, they called us in. I think it was by luck or something. I don't know. We were walking around, and then they saw, hey, come in, let's apply. Then we applied. But we called in by the principal. Me and my friend, we applied. We sent there our stuff, and then they replied. When they replied, but then back then I used the one that because they needed an acceptance letter from some university. That time I only had VET. I had vets under electrical. I was accepted for electrical from vets. Cool. And then
Can I really tell how the story went complicated?
there you go. Then from there, there was a day. Then they called my friend. Today they called my friend. Like, cool, come in, come to Joburg right now. The megawatt.
The one in Germiston.
Probably, yeah, I think so. Yes, it's the megawatt one. So he went in and then he called me. He's like, "Hey, did Eskom call you to come in and sign the contract?" I was like, "No." Now I'm panicking. I'm like, "Fuck, why am I not being called?" He goes with the parent and they come back. And then around 4, they call me. They tell me, "Okay, cool." They call my mom, obviously. Then my mom, I used to use my mom's phone. Call my mom's like, "Cool, can you guys come in tomorrow and sign the contract?" Okay, now like, how the fuck are we gonna get to Joburg? That's number one.
This is from
Hammanskraal to Joburg.
Okay.
No car, no nothing. Now you need to get there at a certain time.
Taxi.
I think we needed to get to 8 or 10 o'clock or whatever. Fudge, we left early. And the thing is, no GPS. You don't know where you're going. Just know it's somewhere around here. You know? So, okay, cool. Eventually we get there. There's another fucked up thing about this whole situation, right? It's like if somebody calls you late at night, when they call you, they're like, "Come tomorrow to sign or you're fucked." What the fuck do? You need to get there.
Yeah, in crisis
somehow.
mode now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, we
It's
get there.
non-negotiable, bro. You
Bruh.
have to make it happen.
Sign or you're fucked. Okay, cool, we get there eventually. That's fine. And then we chill. I remember the HR lady, Pinto. So it was a bit complicated, as Fabrice was alluding. It was complicated because when they thought, when I said mechatronics, I actually meant mechanical because they don't know what the fuck mechatronics is. So now there's two things. So that time they were only looking for mechanical engineering. They were only going to for that megawatt part. They're only going to sponsor mechanical engineering. Even the HR lady showed me that the mandate they got from, I think, one of their companies or sponsors or whatever, I only need mechanical engineers only, no electrical, no nothing. This is what I need. So probably that's why I got the bursary then. Now we spend the whole day trying to figure out what mechatronics is. I tell them mechatronics is a bit of all of those things: mechanical, electrical. Now I need to prove that, okay, within my degree, I will actually be doing some aspects of mechanical.
So I'll be able to work as a mechanical.
As a mechanical, yes.
You know, electromechanical engineers were also a problem in explaining what is mechatronics. Because the moment you say it's a combination of mechanical and
They think
electrical, somebody
electro.
comes and say, "What about electromechanical? Is it the same thing?" And then you're like, "No, it's not the same thing. What is the difference?" And then you're like, "You don't know what to say because you have not been in the program yet."
That's an interesting one. So eventually, how did that go?
Like pretty much the whole day, trying to convince them. We get to a point where we call UCT to explain to them what mechatronics is.
Oh wow, you called UCT.
Yes.
Wow.
So we called electrical department. We called the electrical department, and then they actually gave a student who does mechatronics to explain to them what mechatronics is. To say, okay, cool. Do they have these kind of courses? The mechanical sort of course. It's like, third year, fourth year, whatever. There's this course about this and this and this and this. Then eventually, okay, cool. They were convinced mechanical is there. So now I can actually sign a contract. Now they have to draft a completely new contract for me, specifically for me.
Wow. Because you're the only person I knew with a mechatronics degree.
Exactly.
Sponsored by ESCOM.
You see, that's where
they,
it comes
they
from.
never like
No,
mechatronics.
they don't. So
It
I was
was
one
like
of those special cases. So I got in with technicality. They saw mechatronics. They even scratched it out and said, "No, this is not mechatronics. This is mechanical," on my application. And I said, "Cool, it's fine." I think we got there around probably 9:10. We left around 3-4. Pretty much the whole day trying to make sure that I get accepted.
So your mom was
I signed the
stressing,
contract.
you know?
Yes, I need to sign the bloody contract. It didn't happen. Yeah, signed the
Nah, so-
contract, and then I flew in.
That sounds cool. For me, it was the case that, because I didn't apply anyway, right?
Mhm.
after I got my matric, like I told you, there were a bunch of guys, Sasol guys, engineers who used to come to tutor at my school.
Yes.
So of course they've been tracking my performances in those tutorials, right? So they will call and find out out of curiosity how I did, and I tell them my results, and I'm like, shit, dude, we need to get you a bursary and whatever. So they organized something, and I told them I want mechatronics, and so I remember I was a security guard at the time. I was at work.
Oh, wow.
I get this call. I speak to this lady on call. She's saying, we will get you a varsity now if you can agree to study chemical engineering.
Yep.
Wow.
Dude, I've never been so conflicted. At the time, I have zero prospect. Like, there's nothing on the table about mechatronics, right? At the time, I knew I wanted to go to TUT. I hadn't applied to Nelson Mandela yet. And I'm still, this is immediately after I get my results. So this lady is there. Some guy from ESCOM also called, like, do electrical engineering, we will get you varsity. We will sort everything out. I'm like, I want mechatronics. And
Yep.
at the time, I was so obsessed about mechatronics that my mind, you know, when you have taken the entire year, your mind is like, I'm going there. And then somebody says, here's the thing that I give you now.
It's guaranteed.
Yeah. You are like, my mind is there, but I'm like, I'm going to do mechatronics. And partly is because my results were good enough, so I was kind of arrogant enough to say no.
Yes.
You know? But dude, that was challenging, man.
That
Because
sounds
when
like
I
a
tell
really
my
tough
friends,
decision, especially with funding, because that's a big one.
yeah. So when I tell my friends what's going on, my friends are like, dude, take this thing, because they are not in my position in terms of the results. And you're getting everybody is kind of advising you to take this, and then you are like, dude, I want this thing. Why do you want it so bad? I don't know. I just love it. I know this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually went the way it went.
Yeah, that's why, like, with a lot of privileged people. That's why, for me, I think I'm privileged in many ways, because all the wrong things that happened, but eventually I got there somehow. Even with, I remember when we did the whole awards thing, we went to Johannesburg. Obviously, with the principal and what. From home to Johannesburg, there was some Gauteng ceremony that we do, for everybody got 100% in something. So cool.
You're part of the golden 100% generation.
Yes. Okay, we got there. It was nice. And then I think the mayor, the premier, whatever, of Gauteng and everybody was there. Then they were, remember, obviously that, I don't know if, let's see, it's been over 10 years, I can say this, yes. So, what? No, it's been over 10 years, right? You can only say things after 10 years, right? Safe, no? I don't know.
Well, depends what you're saying, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so it's one of those, cool, you get the awards. So when you get the awards, you get, I think the actual trophy, you get a laptop, you get a watch, and probably money and stuff, like those kind of stuff. That was the best event ever in terms of, like, yeah, even now, that was the best event I've ever attended. Like, the food and everything was on point, everything. Okay, cool. Then one by one, obviously they call you to stage to get your trophy and certificate and stuff. Cool. In that, I was chilling in the mats table. There was just obviously just white people and me. And then when that happens, obviously they're busy. These white people talk. At that time, there was that period where I didn't know how to speak English.
Yeah.
They just speak it to me. I don't know what the fuck, how to reply. And it's just, that those white people who are eager to talk to you. But I can't reply back. I can only...
Yeah, I was in that situation for a while.
Yeah, it was rough. I think I only started speaking English properly maybe second year or maybe first half of first year. But story for another day. Okay, cool. Then I got there. Then you greet the important people. When you greet the important people, then you get to your point now. Then somebody, like, in the background, they like, do you have sponsorship? Like, yes, okay, cool. So pretty much they were indicating, if you don't have sponsorship, I can hook you up right there and there. Something Gauteng province, a scholarship there, or maybe some bursary. So, and you can see that thing wasn't on, I'll say, on the books. They were just, I don't know whether it was a black thing or what. If you don't have anything sponsorship wise, the person can hook you up from the, obviously from funding that they get for students. I was like, interesting. So I've seen like there's a lot of backdoor things that are happening for elite performing students overall in South Africa. I don't know whether it's a Gauteng thing alone.
Yeah, but it makes sense because there's such a vast gap
Yes.
between performance and, you know, maybe I can bring a less depressing story of how I came to Mechatronics. All right, you guys have really, really profound experiences. You know, no, I mean, in my case, it was very simple. Like, I have I'm in a family of 8.
Sure.
At some point, at the time, I was like the youngest. So almost all my older siblings are in varsity, and particularly my older brother, he was doing conceptual art at Wits. Then it was still Wits Tech. And so I always used to love hearing his stories. At the time, obviously, I was very eager on technology and, you know, very passionate about the idea of coding and building stuff all over the show. And so my brother tells me about these different programs. So he'd always talk to me about the different things he sees friends building. I remember he told me about programming, because at the time I was still, maybe when you talk about how we got to actual coding,
Sure.
I can unpack that. But he was giving me stories of his friends who code, and it just sounded so cool, and the problems they'd be solving. And then one day he told me that there's this discipline called Mechatronics. All right, and he unpacked it to me, you know, the combination of it. And obviously I was privileged at the time, you know, we had computer and internet at home, so went and Googled it and figured out, okay, cool, Mechatronics. And obviously you see the diagrams and it looks so cool. And especially if you have that bug of just being willing to explore multiple things, it kind of like hits home and captures that part
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Well, yes. Long story short, from like, this was grade 10, really decided I want to do Mechatronics. Then another thing where I was fortunate, I had an older sister who was in UCT already.
Okay.
So whilst I was, let's say, in grade 8, she had already gone to UCT. So I kind of like already had the idea of what UCT was, and so it didn't feel like this foreign thing. So she'd come back from holidays and share her stories. So I kind of already had UCT in my mind just from her experiences, and she'd have her friends over and stuff like that. And so, yeah, then it was easy. Then obviously I discovered that UCT has Mechatronics. So obviously if you're in Joburg, especially like around Joburg vibes, Wits is like, you know, the main guy, it's the top boss. You go to the open day, did the whole vibe, checked out aeronauticals, I think was pretty cool. And I thought about, you know, doing that. And long story short, even applying at UCT, I mean, my sister came back for I think it was probably the June. I know they come back around like May-ish, you know, UCT timelines then. She came back with the application forms, filled them in. She went back to Cape Town and submitted them for me. By like July, I got a feedback already from UCT with an acceptance letter for Mechatronics and Res. So from July around there, I already knew I was going and I had Res. Then the big thing was funding. All right, which obviously, you know, not so super privileged. I've got like 3 or 4 older sisters and brothers already in varsity, so financially things were not really great. So I knew I needed to try and find another plan. So obviously applying for bursaries.
Oh, remember that bursary of yours. Okay, cool. Sure.
Yeah, so there's definitely obviously like, that was tough actually. So there were all these options, and obviously there were these technology challenges. I remember attending a few, but nothing was just coming together, except for one where I remember going online and they specifically had Mechatronics as something that they funded. So I put like super focus on that and filled in the application. And then they sent me in to do the normal psychometric tests. And I remember, because back then I stayed in the East, so traveling to Joburg was still pretty cool then. You know, catch a taxi from, you know, Elspark, Germiston vibes, to Germiston town and then to Joburg. And it was somewhere around like Brum, very close to Wits, in what's that Boston College. There's like a building there. So went in there, very dodgy, like small little room. You're not even sure what's going on. There's a couple of people. You write the test. So after I wrote the test, this was probably around, I'd be lying if I knew exactly which month, but the latter years of matric, like before the end of the year. And I never heard from these guys ever again.
Shucks.
All right. And I remember there was a lady, Precious Ledwaba. She was the contact person. And then she messaged me and told me, no, you're fine. You'll be taken care of. You know, the application seems okay. But nothing official written. So I remember obviously, you know, telling the folks that, yeah, there is some kind of funding, but they haven't gotten back to me. So I was still privileged, you know. Parents paid the plane ticket, got there. And to cut the long story short, only at the end of the first semester do these guys pitch up and say that, hey, okay, cool, yeah, here's some funding, here's the whatever. So the whole of first semester, I'm basically not sure whether I'm funded. So that was at least my little dilemma at the time.
But then during that, I remember for me, I needed to produce, even though they haven't paid, but I needed to produce some letters.
Yeah, proof of registration and all that
Yes.
stuff. Yeah, those
Not
they
registration, but a proof of funding.
Like from the UCT point of view.
Yes. I needed
Really?
I need to
I
provide
never.
that.
That was actually one of the things that was weird because I used to hear guys talk about that stuff, registration fees, blah blah. UCT had none of
I
that stuff.
went through UCT with 0 registration fee. I don't know.
They
anything
never
about
used to
it.
do any of that stuff, you
Yes.
know. So I never had any of that pressure about proof of this and that.
That's another thing nice. Like we realize how privileged we are. Because others, if you talk to a normal UCT student, you talk to them, they'll tell you, no, there's a registration fee, there's a what fee. I've never known about
International
those things.
students, I know, they have to like produce they have to pay a certain percentage
For them 2 years.
of
then
the whole fee up
for
front.
South Africans.
I had a lot of my friends at the porch, Val.
Sure.
Those guys were just saying words I couldn't quite understand at the time. Registration fee. What is that? You know? And when I realized, because I used to go there, like when I came home for June holidays, I'll just visit them. But you'll see some things that we used to have and took for granted at UCT, like your transport.
Yes.
It was solid, bruh. And when you go there, you realize there's a bus after every 1 or 2 hours, and you have to specifically be there, or it's going to leave you behind, and all. So that's when I kind of.
Even NEFSAs, they don't give you on hand. There's a voucher, whatnot.
Oh yeah, they have that
Yeah.
other weird system. I remember. Yeah, you didn't get cash.
I was like, dude, for me, moving from Res to actually going off campus was motivated by the fact that NEFSAs will be putting money in my bank account to pay the. And then at least I would have something, you
Yes,
know.
off campus,
As opposed to being in your Rochester, you were just fed
it's
there,
amazing.
and but yeah, it was interesting, bro. The
No,
privilege that came with.
But in the
UCT.
end, I mean, you see the differences and whatnot. And obviously, if I, get back to you guys in your bursary, so throughout the whole varsity, I kept trying to get to another bursary, because all the ESCOM people, the cool guys, getting more money. Obviously, ESCOM always had their delays too.
In my
Buying laptops and phones and all that stuff. And I kept thinking, damn, man, if only I can get that.
I used to think Sasol is the best bursary sponsor you can ever get. Like if you had Sasol.
To some degree, yeah. Even to work for. Apparently, Sasol pays quite well.
Yeah,
So if you're on that system at that time, before they had their restructuring issues and stuff like that, it wasn't a bad bursary.
I was actually pissed when I see people with Sasol bursaries and they are not even from Sasolburg, and I'm like, fuck, I'm from there, but I don't have this.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but in the end, it worked out because I noticed, come the end of my degree, basically it was a scholarship. So I didn't have to pay anything back, didn't have to do anything. And actually, their requirement was that you're supposed to work in South Africa for the period. And obviously, the job I got at the time was definitely not complying with that. So in the end, I didn't have any of those obligations and stuff like that where you have to go work, which started nailing a lot of people, especially with ESCOM.
Yeah.
But in any case, So that's like coming to Mechatronics. So now,
I think if you found a way to be funded by ESCOM, and then maybe your final year or the year you meant to work for them, somehow you found a way to leave that contract, it was the best thing out.
Yeah.
It was the best thing, because like I remember your Lindas and Togos and what, they got to a situation where now they can't pretty much accept everybody in the program. It was back then. It was first.
Yeah, that's when the problem started. They basically
Yes.
couldn't hire all the
Everybody.
engineers.
Yeah. So for people who managed to wiggle their way out, I think that was the best way out, because you got funded, and then somehow, maybe because of a loophole, maybe because of a political thing, maybe because of maybe you failed, whatever, you eventually left the program. Then you were in good condition, because like you've got all the upside without the downside.
I think so. There was this guy, a friend of mine at UCT. He was funded by SKA,
Oh yeah, they.
electrical engineering.
I mean, they funded like a lot of the research in the electrical department.
Yes.
yeah.
All the master students were pretty much
Yep.
heavily funded by SKA.
So yeah, this guy started first year to final year all under SKA. Final year, second semester kind of failed something. SKA dropped him, and then he just completed, and then he was free. Like, how best can you get it? Now you are no longer obligated to work for them if you don't like them.
But the thing is, what we don't realize is that at the time when you get an ESCOM bursary, it's not just the bursary, but it's the guaranteed employment, because there's also that fear that how do you know you're going to find a job?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's only when you're graduating and you start applying that you realize that, actually, I'm getting some other kinds of options. All right. And, but I mean, like, yeah, that's obviously been an interesting kind of like thing to reflect on. But how would you guys describe your journey, since we're in the varsity experience then, with just getting into software engineering and, you know, getting into programming? What was your journey from zero coding to obviously starting to fall in love with the discipline?
Yeah. Then from there, got accepted, got into UCT. First year, going through emotions, not understanding what I'm doing, and then pretty much battling with the usual stuff, language, and pretty much you get to remember not understanding something, then book a time with a lecturer. You only get there, I don't know how to express myself.
You can't explain your problems.
I can't.
You literally don't know anything.
No.
Yeah, this is actually so deep.
Because I do recognize I don't understand this thing. But then when I get there, the lecturer makes me feel dumb. I can't talk.
That's a key thing that we have to understand.
I can't talk.
Wow.
And then you just end up accepting everything he or she say. Just saying yes, okay, I understand. When you leave there, I don't understand shit.
Actually, I think I went my whole undergrad with the mentality that I'll just go read this thing myself.
Yep.
Because I couldn't understand in class. And I couldn't go and ask because I didn't know how to express myself. And I wasn't that comfortable enough to actually confront a white person. So I would literally go to the book and read whatever I can
And confirm for both of you guys, this was the first time you're basically in a room with a white person.
Yep.
Yes.
All right,
Dude.
that's so heavy, bro.
Yes.
Like, this is so unreal.
Dude, it was even worse when you're doing all those physics labs. And then you share a group with a white person. And then
you had to be a random group allocation. I remember that, yeah.
You know, it was so depressing because you cannot express yourself. The only thing you can do is to accept in that context, I'm dumb, and that's it.
Wow,
you know when you
that's so
try
deep.
when you try to protect your identity, I've already given up on that.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
like, okay,
Yeah.
these guys think
No.
I'm dumb.
Yes.
That's fine.
That's how it is.
Life goes
Sure.
on. I'll just do this thing on my own. Everything that I can do on my own, I will do.
Yep.
But the group work, if I had to choose, if say a course where we'd have to assemble ourselves to be in a group work, I prefer to be with other black people than like your tutorial session. You sit with everybody you want to sit with. Then I'll choose to be with other black people where I can express myself. But there were things that I hated. Your practical, your lab sessions where I would have to be randomly chosen with some other white dude, I don't know, and white people are normally can express themselves easy. So you tend to take the inferior position somehow, intellectually or whatever. You kind of accept everything, even if you kind of have a different opinion.
But because you can
just
express
go
yourself, you can't say no, you're wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously the natural thing is always to run towards a cultural explanation, a cultural difference explanation, as opposed to a fundamental racial one, even though maybe it's not even worth distinguishing. But yeah, to what you, obviously, even in UCT, you also discover that there's also a spectrum. There's your blacks from Hilton, St. John's, and those guys. There's people like myself from Model C schools. So I had no problems with white people, though I did feel that inferiority, because you come from a space where, I ended up in the newspaper in my town, for matric and whatever. And then you rock up there and there's guys with like 8 A's. They all come from the same private schools. They've all played rugby together. And you start to realize that, oh my God, there's like levels to this. And then what I think was interesting for me was discovering like a lot of the foreign African guys, like your guys from Zim, and their vibes. That was, for me, was also an interest. How did you guys interpret that there were other black guys? Obviously, these guys were very privileged. A lot of them came from private schools and stuff, and some of them had parents who were like, neighbors with Mugabe, and shit like that.
Yeah.
How did you guys interpret like those kind of like folks?
Funny enough, in my first year, I actually felt connected with the black foreign guys than South African black South African your Model C or there was a level of instant
we couldn't
connection.
Connect to Fabrice, but I could connect to
a guy from Nigeria, from Zim. I would connect
Kenya
with them.
Yes.
I would connect with the guys from Lesotho. Okay, Lesotho was even more connection.
Like close to home. I mean, they barely.
Yeah, but you would understand that in terms of just connections, I would make connections with them. But in terms of, I realized that a lot of these guys did is it O or A levels? I don't remember which one.
The famous A levels.
Wow,
all right?
Wow, dude! There was a guy in Lepolesa. I don't know if you know him, but I did.
I think so.
We did first year with him,
Mechatronics.
Komsai. Dude, I was struggling. Komsai was a nightmare, bruh. Komsai was a nightmare.
Actually, let's dive into that. How was your computer science experience? Like
CSC 1015. I come into this program. What do you know? I'm from a township high school. What we had, textbooks. So it's your pencil, pen, and book, and your textbook. That's how you study. That's what you used to. And then you come into the world of ComSci. That's not enough. You need a PC to actually run shit and see what's going on there. So I come into my first year. I bought that CSC textbook. I start reading, making notes, running my programs with a pen and paper.
Wow. You didn't have a personal laptop?
I didn't have a personal laptop, not even a PC or shit like that. So I go throughout my first year. And then, you have to you have to go to the labs, right? Open JCRASP. I struggle with that shit. I remember, I only understand now what I needed to do there. After you install JCRASP at the time, you needed to kind of connect it to your JDK. I didn't understand that then.
Okay.
So, you had to do a kind of fiddling before. So to ask a person for his laptop to use it and do that, you wouldn't know how to set it up because you don't know. So you go to the ComSci labs there.
It's already set up.
the problem is part of it was being shy. It's you can't easily ask for help because you are kind of still shy. You cannot express yourself. Language is kind of a barrier too, so you can't express yourself to ask.
Because it's not. It wasn't only for a white person or an international black person. It was talking to a Xhosa person who doesn't understand your language. You need to be still in.
Oh yeah, those
English.
Xhosas had vibes. They remember the whole suit up thing.
Zulu. Yes. So you still have to converse with them in English.
In English, so you've got a guy. The guys you would know, which are South Africans, like your Zulu guys, your Xhosa guys, you know.
Yeah,
and
those
then
Lazi guys. Oh my goodness.
and then
That was the whole vibe.
yeah, you would still have to speak English, and depending how comfortable they seem to be
Yes.
with the computer science, it becomes even worse for you because now you literally have to show yourself that you are dumb. So, dude, my first year was my com sci was just I just what I know is I could write exams, I could write tests, I could write exams. I don't know how I managed to submit couple of lab assignments, and then at some point, when we get to classes, you know, OOP thing, moving forward, I got into the point that this thing was beyond my understanding.
Object-oriented programming.
I remember a lady was teaching that white lady was teaching that, right?
Okay.
Before there was that black Indian guy, the short one, I don't know his name.
Hussein.
Hussein.
Yeah, Hussein, I remember. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
So he started the program. When you get to the OOP, I remember that lady was the lady was teaching it,
I
and
remember her. What was the name again? Was it Michelle?
I don't remember
Yes,
the
it
name,
was-
bro.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Michelle. Michelle was the one from biology. So who was it? I can see her face because she was also head of department at some point. There was three ladies. There was Michelle, which was coming from a biology background, and then there was the other one who was more for what again? What do you call this thing? Compilers. Was it compilers? What was their
No,
specialty?
there was the ethics guy when you did the whole.
Yes. What was her specialty? Shucks, I forgot her specialty. But then yes, there was two ladies there. Was it Michelle? Michelle was the Python one.
I know she was. I was doing CSC 1015. So you had multiple lectures within that one lecture. So
Yeah.
you had Hussein, and then OOP moving forward. It was that lady. I kind of dropped at some point. But now there's this guy
Wait,
Lepolesa.
let's start there then. Like, because for us, our intro to computer science was we're still within the electrical engineering department. It seems like yours the year before.
I was going to
was-
CSC.
Yeah, it
So you had the
seems
option.
different.
So in our
Yes.
case, we had a course called Computing for Electrical Engineers.
There was a course for computing for electrical engineers where there was Python, right?
Yeah, it was
Sure.
Python in the first
Yes.
semester, and then
So
C
you had an
in the
option.
second
I-
semester.
That's the thing. I messed up on the options.
Oh.
I didn't know that there were options. You know, I was not listening. And then I got the book where you choose your courses. I'm like CSC 1015. Only find out later. No, if you had never done electrical engineering before, I mean
Yes.
computer science before,
Oh,
you
don't
should
do
have
that.
done that.
Yep.
Dude, I had made
Sonia. It was Sonia.
Yes.
I'm bad with names. So I go through this. We do this complex. Yeah, this is the lady.
Yes.
This
Yeah, I
is the
remember
lady.
Okay. Yeah, her specialty is databases.
So we go through this OOP, going through this assignment, which was supposed to be due yesterday. I haven't even started today. And then Lepolesa is like telling other guys, hey, yesterday I went out drinking. I came back around 11 o'clock. I just opened this, the tutorial. I did it, the assignment, I did it, submitted just before. And I'm like thinking, how is this guy able to do this thing within 1 hour? I couldn't do it the entire week. Like,
Shucks.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I knew
I
people
was-
who were doing those assignments within like an hour, 30 minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, because obviously I'd programmed before, so a lot of those first assignments, I mean, literally, some of them were like a 5-10 minute job,
Dude,
pretty much. They were literally a joke.
I was so depressed at some point. I remember to be honest, I was depressed. If I can determine depression now, I can say during that period I was depressed. One time when I came back, decided I'm quitting this course, I felt so free, like as if something was removed from me. Like I was so free, bruh. I could do math on my own. I could do physics. I could do all these other courses. John Green was even the best course I've ever loved in varsity.
Okay.
You know, and yeah, and funny enough, there was one of the Zim guys who was doing CSC 1015. He was doing, I think, at the time CA or something like that, financing. But there was they've taken CSC. I don't know, it's an extra whatever. So the guy continued with this, and I'm like, dude, now I'm no longer doing that. I can't handle it, whatever. You know, when you try to reason people who understand your point of view, like literally this shit is too difficult for me.
Sure.
So the guy continued with the course, and then the guy, when the, what do you call DP comes up?
You have the criteria to basically be allowed to write exams. Duly performed.
Yes, you would get on your when you go on Vula and you check under CSC.
It's sent out. Oh God.
Yeah,
I remember the trouble there. Yeah.
So the guy tells me that I didn't get a DP. He's telling me about himself that he didn't get a DP and whatever. Assumption is I didn't. So I go and check. I got it, only to find out that I've done enough work to qualify for DP. Whereas I think he missed one of the key things you were supposed to.
Didn't do all the assignments.
Yeah. Dude, I just went in, wrote the exam. I studied the exam like I would study for maths and science. I just went in, wrote the exam. I attempted all the theoretical questions, your practical. When it came to your programming shit type of thing, then I got like 49%. And then I had like 6 months to prepare for a supplementary exam for next year. Wow, that was it.
That sounds hectic, you know, because I know myself and you, Bonks, obviously we both did mechatronics, but slightly different years. So there's the computing for electrical engineering course, but then we were mad enough to further go and actually pick up computer science as electives, all right, which is an interesting thing to dwell on when I look back, the difference between programming as per, let's say, electrical engineers, and then programming as a computer science itself. And how obviously you can clearly see a difference, even from like a graduate perspective, you know, the way that electrical engineers code versus someone who, let's say, has done computer science.
Electrical engineers, they didn't know anything about coding. There was the difference between electrical engineers, mechatronics, and elecom.
Oh yeah,
electrical engineers knew nothing about coding
at
all. They just, to pass those exams or to pass those assignments, because we did what? There's electrical engineering, intro to electrical engineering, computer science, or computing for electrical engineering, and then second year we did that C++ course.
Yeah, that was the one that
was high level.
Up a lot of people. Yeah.
Yes.
But everyone copied from everyone.
Exactly. So that one was mainly copying. If you don't understand if you don't understand electrical engineering or computer science, like algorithms and writing stuff, that course you are fucked.
I just didn't know what I learned in that C++ course, bro. I just copied my entire way out of that shit.
Yeah. Then for me, yeah, sure, got introduced first year. I think first semester, didn't understand what I was doing. Electrical, like that Python course, I didn't understand what I was doing. Every day I was dedicated on it, doing the programs and stuff. For me, I was privileged enough to get to a point where, because of my high school stuff, I got a laptop. So I had a dedicated laptop. So that was one of the things that I won: a laptop, money, blah blah, etc. So cool.
Fuck.
So I didn't have to be in the labs. So I always, because I had a laptop, I just go home. The main thing, just put everything in the stick after varsity, after classes, and then go home. And then because I was off campus. I didn't have internet and stuff. I just put everything on the stick, get home, connect, and then work. You guys, even though you were on campus, even though you didn't have a laptop, you were on campus. You can still go to the labs or whatever.
Yeah, I remember I used to see those scenes, man. You find everybody's all there trying to figure out.
Yes.
And because I had that issue of being good, everyone would be like, "Yeah, how do you do this thing?" And everyone's like watching you. And it's so bad because back then, if I'm honest, I don't think I got it.
Yeah.
For me, I never really understood it. Like,
okay.
You know that, people are struggling, but I don't think I internalized the reality of how depressing and how hard it actually was. I just thought that, like, yeah, whatever, Dude. It's just the game. These people just need to figure it out. It's like, especially Linda, because Linda was always the one, like, pestering.
Yes.
And I always just think, he's just being sensational, But I never understood that, oh my God, this guy is actually just not getting it.
No, yes.
All right.
Yep.
And so...
Then after that, so first, I don't know how I survived. Obviously, it was a whole year course. I survived somehow first semester. Second semester, I got to, even the OOP concept, I didn't understand it. I thought when we built OOP, those things would actually be alive. And
there'll be real objects.
Exactly. Only to find out, no, this concept.
Dude, at least you had some thought. I couldn't differentiate. I just knew the classes, and then there was a word object. It was
methods,
too much. Dude, here's the thing. Chapter 4 in that book was chapter 3 started with classes, right?
Yeah.
And then it went further, something like 4. I don't remember what was in 5, but chapter 6 for sure it was arrays.
Yes, definitely.
When they got into that part, I was glad because arrays are your basic things. I could literally read them myself and understand them. So
because there's a mathy element to arrays. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when I studied for exams, I studied 1, 2, 3, I think, and then chapter 6.
Yeah.
All these classes, whatever.
Inheritance,
vectors,
encapsulation.
None of that.
Dude, those things I kind of learned them way later when I was just studying it for myself now, like going through that CSC book.
Sure.
Each day, every day, just reading this thing when I was home. And then I went through it. Started, now I could, but by that time, I actually had given up because I understood a piece of. So when I started, I wanted to learn programming. The thing, what happened is I kind of got into to understand the what is this assembly.
Sure.
I've gotten to understand assembly at that point, and then we learned a bit of C, which is a higher level. Our application was slightly higher than then. Then I started trying to explore app development, starting from assembly. But when you're building, I mean, starting not assembly, C. So when you are trying to build an application from the PC point of view, you want to build a GUI first.
Sure. Yeah, the GUI is usually
So I've gotten this was it a book or something where they show you how to build a GUI with a browser, right?
Sure.
For C++ program. I mean C programs. Sure. So I didn't even know
Qt.
No, not the Qt. It was just a book to just do a simple HTML page, but being backed up by C code, right?
Okay.
So at the time, I didn't understand the web programming type of shit. I just followed those things. But because I was developing something I could see, I was into it. So as I tried to go more into complex things, I couldn't do it because the GUI thing wasn't getting there. I wasn't getting enough of documentation around it. So I learned there's a Qt in C++. Sure. Then I started jumping from C to learn the basics of C++. I went into C++, getting all that OOP thing into place. Then I went to Qt level because of how at the time already understood how Java works. I felt like Qt is outside C++. Therefore, it's not a thing I should be using because it's not a thing of a language, at that time. So I got into the point where I gave up on C++ because of I couldn't do the GUI except if I don't go the Qt wrote.
Yeah,
So
Qt
I
was
then
like the go-to. Yeah.
yeah, but now I knew about Swing, Java Swing.
Yeah.
That's when I started going back into Java world and then starting that textbook from page one and going forward and going to that GUI stuff in the textbook and then start building from there, going with the Swing. And you know when you start window pops up, you feel good. That's that's how. And then eventually I kind of. But even then, when I was doing that for fun. I didn't know this was a thing I could be doing for professional purposes. I always thought I would be an engineer and I'm not going to be competitive in the...
Yeah, remember how we used to feel about software and how we felt like just being a software engineer was this downgrade, given that we actually could build so much more, you know, in terms of hardware and... And I guess, yeah, it does beg that question now of, like... Actually, I want to know, when did the light bulb start going on for you guys?
Yeah.
When did you get to that point where, okay, this is actually making sense now?
Okay, so for me then, so where was I? Yes. First semester, not sure how I got there. Cool, then second semester, somehow with programming, it was, after, I don't know whether it's because I spent more time on it or whatever, it started clicking more. It was a thing that it was just becoming easier for me. Easier and easier and easier the more I'm doing it. And then we did the project for, what's that? The project when I was part of your team, Sudoku.
Oh yeah, we're in the same team.
Yeah, I was part of the team. I didn't do anything, but then I was part of the team. So I think Fabrice and his friend is the only one who did everything.
Oh yeah, with Quena. Yes, you're part of my team with Quena. I remember.
Yes. So probably Fabrice is the only one who did everything there. Cool. That's fine. I got my mask, and then I think it was the highest mask then. End of the year result, I think it was it 75 or 78 or something like that. Cool. Then obviously, when you get those kind of results, you start now being, okay, cool.
Yeah, you identify more with the
thought, yes. And second year, it came through. Now I have to do an elective second year. Then I was like, cool, there's ComSci. I think that I had an option of ComSci and something else. Then I was like, okay, cool. Based on what happened last year, I think ComSci is a thing for me. But then people are afraid of ComSci.
Oh yeah, niggas used to fear.
Yes,
ComSci,
I'm like
it's some disease.
Then I had to now start. That's way, like, I think I've done it 3-4 times at varsity, where I didn't know what the best option are. So I just now, it's that time where you're in, was it White Lab?
Yeah, during registration.
No, not White Lab, the other lab.
What is that lab?
The registration one, yeah.
There's the White Lab, and then there's the...
we did
we did a lot of practicals in it for electrical.
Our first years we did practicals.
Yes,
in
a lot.
the one next
there.
to the... Oh, I can't believe you're forgetting.
I don't know what it was called, but then yes, there.
So when you're going... I think when you go into White Lab,
yes,
you would branch here and slightly go
Yeah,
out.
it's like straight up.
Yep.
I see it. I think I see it.
So that's why we used to do a lot of registration in there, right? So, okay, then I was busy there, and then I had, I think, 2 options or something. And then I couldn't make any decision of Q. Get into my zone, leave the room, meditate a little bit, be all spiritual, just to say, God, please guide me on this decision. I don't know which one it is. And then just float around for some time. After floating around, and then I'll get an answer. Then go back. Cool. The answer was do ComSci. I did ComSci. I ticked. I want to do ComSci. Then I did ComSci first year, second year. It was just flowing. It was doing the thing. Yeah. It was just working.
That was actually a fun year, actually. Remember?
Yes, it was fun.
Yeah,
it was
10,
doing
15,
the thing.
16.
Pretty much that's how I got introduced now properly into computer science. I guess I'll continue with the story on how I got there, but then that's my intro.
Fuck, man. I think mechatronics was difficult, guys.
No, it actually is. It's a tough degree when I think about it. Yeah.
Did you had to do ComSci, which is a certain mentality or paradigm shift in its own right, and then you have to do your electrical engineering stuff. Especially for some of us, we came into mechatronics from a good solid background in electrical or electronics. You know, I was biased in those two
and just general physics too.
Yeah. So I kind of, because my dad used to fix your radios, TVs, and shit like that. So I used to open shit up. So I knew what is electronics. I kind of understood what is electronics. So for me, being part of the Mechatronics, I kind of became biased towards what I am capable of understanding. Your electronic and electrical journey for me was God. Mechanical engineering, the mechanical portion of it was the early ones were stemming from intuition. We live in the mechanical world, so you are able to kind of understand and formulate what these guys are talking about, right? You can visualize what they're trying to teach you. Whereas electrical was, if you've never had electronics before, you would have an issue trying to visualize the movement of a current or some shit like that. But I was privileged because I was already kind of thinking in those terms. I understood, I could visualize electronic things. Com science, on the other end, it was just a thing that I didn't understand. And the worst part is this: I'm so solid about my electronics that I'm trying to understand this relative to electronics. You're trying to understand how is public static main making all the electronic switches in the chip change. Like, how do you
to go on and off?
This is a text. Yeah. This is a text. It's not a thing. It's a text, but it's making things which are physical. Electronics is physical. Electrons are moving. Those are physical. I
think because the full hardware stack only makes sense, I think, later when you do microprocessors.
Yeah.
And I think like you said, your jump to assembly probably gave that bridge, because you now started seeing where the electronic world now starts to
the software world,
that other stack on the software world. So when would you say the light bulbs went on for you?
For
things
me,
stopped becoming this mysterious mind blocker.
For me, it was when I was excluded from UCT. I had a lot of time on my hands, bro.
Okay.
That year was too long. So I went through some, part of it was control systems. I went through acceptance that, for me to get my degree, I need to love this control system thing. I went through the process where control system, I was doing it for that particular thing, but you can't do control in J. So I kind of explored developing software. But at the time, I think I had a laptop or a PC, I don't remember, one of the two. So it's a thing that you can actually, once you have a PC, you can do programming, you can't do electronics. Electronics, you need components, you need a lab for that. So it was the only thing I could do apart from reading, practically speaking. Okay. So I then went through that journey of starting with C, because I understood C from microprocessor courses. I started building up from there, and then we jumped into Java world when I started reading the book page by page, doing all the examples page by page. But even then, I knew the concepts. When I say concepts, I didn't understand it. Like, for me, a C program and a Java program were same thing.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
I knew that I had to knew an object, but I didn't know what it meant about that. I think it was later when I was working at High Flow, it kind of clicked that actually in the Java world, we're talking about objects. These things are virtual things which communicate by calling each other's methods. It kind of clicked way after my degree, when I was kind of just building things at work, because it was something I could do, and I had a PC to do that.
Sure.
I kind of played around, and then that's when it kind of started clicking. Even then, I didn't know there was this whole world of web development. For me, it was still, when you talk about software development, if it's not for embedded systems, it's basically for your desktop applications. It never clicked. So the browser thing, I knew there was HTML because I kind of learned HTML on my own. I thought the entire web is just HTML. How do you make it images move? I thought it was an advanced concept in HTML that I haven't reached. Like you see, JavaScript, things that have been done by JavaScript, I thought advanced HTML was doing that.
Sure.
It was a section that I haven't reached yet. So the whole web, like your web application thing never came up until even when I was doing my Java certification
Yeah.
at the time, looking for a job in software. I was just doing that. I was just doing Java, you know.
Okay.
I actually did. I did Intellect. The first time Intellect kind of they gave me a test. I wrote that test. I think I spoke to you about this. But that test, a program was running, but it was literally there was no concept of software engineering. It was just writing, spaghetti code. You're making this thing work.
Oh yeah. Spaghetti. In fact, that's probably the key thing I noticed about the difference between engineering, the engineers programming elements as opposed to someone, let's say, who did like a solid computer science degree. With engineering, we're a lot more focused on just getting it to work. I mean, remember the stuff we were writing for microprocessors?
Yep.
One while loop and shove everything in.
Yes.
And maybe you call separate functions here and there if it gets too big. All right? So it's like...
But then there was a reason for that, remember? Because of the memory, you can't create a lot of functions.
Yeah.
You can't be stored in
memory constraints.
Yes.
But you also don't get introduced to
because we're working
those.
with AK.
Yeah, it was pretty small micro and...
So we didn't have the advanced computer science concepts.
Sure.
The only thing I remember...
Like big O notation, time complexity, space complexity. You don't really...
No, never touched on that.
But you do get sanitized to the concept of memory and being memory efficient and those things. So it's kind of fair to say like Mechatronics was gearing you to be an embedded application developer as opposed to being, let's say, a computer scientist.
A software engineer of some sort.
Yeah, because you still learn the principles of software engineering, the different life cycles, agile, waterfall, and all that jazz. But like the level at which they delved onto them in ComSci was probably a lot more intricate. It's interesting actually. All right, just that whole journey. I think my basic 2 cents was like, just from listening to your stories, I try to ask myself, or answer the question of, how did I get to, blank to, let's say, light on? And I think the key thing that stands out is that early development or early exposure to some of these things actually is probably the one thing that makes the most difference. So in my case, I'm like 16, all right? Coming out of a little mini drug phase, so my brain is all fired up in different directions, starting to clean up and all the likes. And then at some point I remember just having a weird dream, all right? Post-apocalyptic world, your kind of like fantasies. I was reading a novel at the time, which was like very like, it was called Left Behind, which was a typical kind of like Christian kind of book for people to read back then. End of the world, the Antichrist. So you kind of dream about these things. The world is ending, new world order, and there's all these different things happening. And so in this dream, I start noticing that there's this weird squiggly kind of like, invisible kind of pattern that's just lurking around in the air. And it somehow approaches people, tries to provoke people, and then some people can sense it and others can't. And then those that do sense it somehow like try and follow it, and then that thing steers people to a certain place, and so it was so weird. And I woke up thinking in my head, what the hell is this thing? It was so different to anything I'd ever seen before. And that sparked a whole different level of curiosity. What is this thing? How can I build it? And so I obviously started going to the library, walking like 20 kilometers from where I was at, just to find books. So I went from your new age kind of like energy chakra, the force kind of thing. And then that was like a whole interesting journey that also I went through, from just exploring different knowledge spaces, if I can call it that, And then the core breakthrough was obviously I was sitting in church one day doing the usual, how was your week? And then explaining my dream and the different things and whatever. And then obviously this one guy pops up at the end as an ex-military guy. And then he walks up to me and he's like, hey, heard what you're saying, seems very interesting, I think you might be interested in something like programming, it sounds a little bit similar to what you're saying, and it might be what you're trying to lead you, or in Christianese terms, this might be what God is trying to lead you into,
Yes.
you know? So long story short, I start visiting the guy every weekend. You know, he gives me books, gives me the programs, gives me pointers. When I'm confused, I asked him. And so that for me was that journey of going from blanks. Because when I look back, it's not like I understood everything the first time. It took like probably a period of like a whole year just visiting this guy that things made sense. But there was no pressure of passing and failing. There was no pressure of whatever. It just felt like a fun thing. I'm excited to go visit Brandon on the weekend.
Yeah.
And when you're visiting the guy, it's more than just the coding. You're visiting, he had a wife, he had kids, he was into like music at the time. And so that whole experience made programming seem like I never felt like there was difficulty in them. Now, obviously, then you get introduced to the fundamental concepts, variables, etc., etc. And so obviously, naturally, then coming to UCT, those things were like very easy. Like OOP, I'd read about OOP all the way when I was 16. So seeing OOP in front of me in a CSI exam is like, and then there was a whole clan around that. You know, you see guys, especially who did comp-sci in the schools, like Kwena and whatever. You started seeing that, and there's also an ego element to it, you know, because there's that, you know, that culture of feeding off the reality that there's something you know that other people are struggling with.
Yes.
And I remember when I look back, there was that kind of like vibe of like, you know, walking out of the comp-sci tests, you know, 30 minutes before everybody else, you know, just to prove that, like, you know, and there was a lot of that vibe that I remember picking up that certain people kind of had. But in any case, you obviously see that comp-sci, even till this day, like you're talking about how now you really understood objects. Like now I'm like, what? It's almost like 7-8 years later, you know, busy studying for like interview questions. And then now I'm like, whew, I actually really understand why interfaces and abstract classes are useful.
Yep.
You know, I thought I understood them there. You gave me a test, I can give you the definition, I can use it. But in terms of having a deep intuitive knowledge of some of these concepts, probably takes years, you know, and discovering them in certain scenarios and contexts that I think, yeah, makes sense. I guess the one takeaway, which I think you highlighted again too, was why don't we get exposed to more real-world practical applications in our computer science degrees? We learn very little about HTML, very little about actually building production-ready apps. Of course, deep focus on algorithms, data structures, which is supposed to be the building blocks to building these things, but really, are they? You know, like if you want to go work for a company today, all right, of course you need the basics and stuff, but I kind of feel like there's a huge chunk of energy placed on teaching people, especially in the computer science sector, a lot of things that probably does not feature as much in terms of their day-to-day operational working knowledge in terms of contributing to a company's bottom line.
Yeah, but then for me, I prefer it that way. I don't prefer us chunking out people who are ready for the workplace. Because if something, like what I always say, in CS environment, a lot of things are fundamentally just built on the fundamentals of computer science. Whether it's networking or whatever, algorithm, they're all built on that. Everything that you use right now is built on the fundamentals. You look at the databases, they're built on trees. You look at other aspects of, let's say Python, you use dictionaries. Dictionaries is pretty much built on, what's this algorithm? I forgot the algorithm. But then a lot of things that you're actually doing that you don't know anything about, they are mainly built on the bare minimum of computer science, the hardcore level of computer science theory. That's what it's
But
built
then
on.
those things are built on assembly, which are built on electronics, which are built
Sure.
on. So the thing is, at what level of abstraction does it become useful for you to? Where's the starting point of how low you need to go?
If we want to, that's one thing I guess I appreciate, which sometimes is difficult to get to. You get to, for example, people who are doing, people who are building your GitHub, right? if you look at how GitHub is, it's a tool that everybody uses. But then if you look at how it's built, it's pretty much algorithms for you to understand. You need to understand that kind of level. Databases as well. Every other tool that you're using, they're built on those basics. Then yes, sure. Where do you want to operate? Do you want to operate from a creator standpoint in like creating those tools like your Dockers and whatnot? Or do you want to operate in that level of saying, okay, I have a MongoDB running, I have a Postgres running, I need to start from that level. I don't want to understand how Postgres has been built. That's where you start. Then I can be productive from that standpoint. Cool, but then you just know you'll be limited in terms of creating something that's outside that because you don't have the fundamentals. That's my level.
That's a good point.
So that's where, from a computer science standpoint, especially the way we've been taught, the way we've been taught exactly from UCT, they'll tell you, we don't want to teach you how to do something, but then we want to teach you the fundamentals so that you can, if they bring you in any aspect of it, you'll still be, you can work.
You'll be able to build your understanding from what you have.
You don't understand a use case, you understand the fundamentals, and then wherever you land is pretty much another use case of that thing. So I prefer that. Yes, if you want to create, people are productive right on the spot without them trying to be creators, then sure, that's fine. Let's teach them how to use Docker. Let's teach them how to use databases. Let's not teach them how those things are actually being built. Then,
but it's one of those like fads in the comp sci industry. There's an obsession with, being able to be a first principle thinker.
Sure.
Everybody loves that. It's like that thing, be able to. But how many engineers, never mind do it, or even need to be first principle thinkers? Most of them are just using APIs and libraries.
Here's the thing.
But the ones who get a lot of money, the edge case guys is the ones who understand the fundamentals.
But it's still like that in engineering. We did control systems. We did all those methods of designing control systems, right? Your root locus, your whatever. You learn those things,
yeah.
Remember? And then when you came out of the program, you came out thinking when you go into industry, you will be the one who's actually creating the
control
model.
You'll model the whole system from the physics.
That's not the case,
all
bro.
the way up.
There's systems already in place
to do that for you.
Yes.
When I got to high flow, and then we started talking about controlling the hydraulics cylinders. There's either the speed or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you're thinking, okay, I'm going to build this kind of controller. No, they say no. There's a
PI
control.
already.
Yeah, PI controller.
Yep.
A card
Box,
you just
yes.
have to buy, and you just have to tune it, and then you realize how anybody with zero qualification can actually do that. They buy the thing, they just tune the thing, and then with literally trial and error, you can get it right. And then you ask yourself, why did I learn all this thing? But it basically boils down to that you have the fundamentals of how the thing works. And because of that understanding, we are hoping in the industry you would say, I see this card does 1, 2, 3, but it doesn't do 1, 2, 3 well, right? For it to do 4 and 5, probably I need to build my own card, start from there, where you would then build your own foundation. It's like looking at Mongo today. Maybe Mongo gives you talking about the speed of how it accept the data, maybe from that point of view, you get to the edge case where you need a NoSQL database that can accept 3 times the values than what the best can give you today. That's when you start solving that edge case problem, right? Then how would you do it if you were taught how to use Mongo? But if you were taught the first principles, then you can start saying, oh, Mongo, how does Mongo work actually? And then you'll be able to analyze it and understand it from the fundamentals, and then understand it from there. Oh, I need to trade this and this and this to make that. And then you are able to build up from there. This is the argument that we...
But don't you think, if I can push back there, don't you think all you've done is you've pushed the work of getting you to go from the fundamentals to how you actually use it onto companies, which is why we've got this massive graduate programs, internships, all these different things that basically companies now have to take you with your raw abilities and obviously expose you to things, which of course the fundamentals help. But the key question here is, to what degree is there a disconnect between what industry needs you to know to basically be productive and what you are actually being fed in academia? All right. And given, for example, I mean, we're going to go into it now, the different fields of software engineering, the different things that they do, it becomes very easy to see very quickly that maybe, like, you know, if you want to, let's say, build mobile apps, it's great that you'll learn about binary search and all these different algorithms, which are amazing, but maybe the proportion of that can be adjusted to include a lot more mobile specific things. All right. Now, of course, you know, you want to build someone with an opportunity to...
Which they do, right? Which you do, because if you check other... Obviously, that's more of a use case base, because I remember, it's like, you know, there's certain programs in varsities where these program, like this varsity actually works well with a certain company. So pretty much they're gearing your graduates to go to that
company. Oh yeah,
right? Because they'll use certain tools, they'll teach certain methods that company I guess loves or like better. So that works a lot of time. For computer science, even for the certain thing we see, I guess it's biased sometimes, whether biased on the company or biased on whoever's in charge at the time. Because I remember when Android was a thing,
there was an Android
starting
course and a gaming course.
Yes, there was a Android course and then there was a gaming course. So depending on if there's a specialty of an Android guy who loves Android at the time, will have an Android course. If there was a game guy, will have a game course. Those kind of stuff. So those things are pretty much, obviously they build on top of the fundamentals, and then most of the time they just edge courses that you can take if you want to. So we do have those kind of stuff. So now how do you scale that kind of model is difficult because it's always biased. It's either biased based on the person who's creating it, or biased because of a certain company that they want to target, because they're saying, hey, we work well with Apple, so we're going to gear our program towards Apple. So those things do actually happen in universities.
That's actually interesting. Yeah, I guess, I mean, the natural evolution, of course, will be to see how, for example, we all did mechatronics, and I think the very existence of mechatronics actually starts to make a little bit of this case that at some point you had a need in industry, which obviously was integrating all these different disciplines, and there was a need for someone who had a very specific insight into this integration and its multiple dynamics and the many applications got in biomedical, manufacturing, robotics, AI, etc. And so a new discipline is formed purely on what industry sees, and it obviously merges into a whole academic discipline itself. So I think a similar kind of vibe, maybe on the computer science level stack, could be interesting. Now, of course, you've mentioned different institutions have their own cocktail of which application layers they will expose their graduates to. Some will be mobile, others will probably be more cloud. If AWS is funding your research, you'll get a lot more AWS cloud infrastructure courses in your third year. And so, yeah, it kind of begs the question that...
And sometimes your companies will provide resources. Remember that Intel board we got for control system?
The Galileos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when they rocked up.
Yep. So,
and while we're doing that shitty micro, the GT16, the Motorola...
Yeah, but
I mean, whilst there were so many other interesting... later on, I saw the niggas move to your STM32s, which are obviously a bit more up to standard. And,
because there was at that time, I remember it was a bit funny because you had the embedded guys who wanted the STM, and then you had the control guys, which is Prof Bro, who wanted the Burgle Bone and those.
Oh, the Beagle Bones.
Yes,
Yeah, the
he
embedded
wanted-
Linux. Yeah.
so he wanted those kind of vibes. But then I guess eventually the for control it works better for that. It's strong, it's powerful, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then I think eventually because of the STM was I don't know how they won, but eventually we ended up starting using STM.
Yeah, because with BeagleBone, it's basically you'd have to introduce these guys to Linux because it's an embedded Linux environment.
Yes.
Whilst with STM, it's just C and what they're already used to.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting one, is the journey in which the choices
So-
universities
so
make.
You see, that's why the person who's actually making the judgment, back to our topic of air, it matters a lot for me because that person has a lot of sway. If they want to, even though yes, fine, there probably might be a committee, but then it will always end up to with that one guy who likes a certain thing and they'll push it and it'll succeed. Even though there's processes for you to follow to get the right thing out there for the best people, but then if I'm exposed to a certain thing, I love it more, I have more sway over others, whether I'm a HOD or whatever the case, eventually I'll be affecting generations of people just because, hey, I like doing this thing. Even though
I
there's
think
rules
that
behind it.
that's what happened with control systems when Pro left the third year, right? The content kind of
I
changed.
just can't imagine
Yes.
control without Bro.
Yes.
How did that thing
But
look
then
like?
when what's his name?
Uh,
Prof.
We thought
Bourget.
about his name.
Yes,
Bourget.
when
KZN
Bourget
guy.
came in, he came with his own flavor. And then his flavor was more geared to, I won't say so Bro's flavor was more South African mines kind of flavor.
Yeah.
Right? Mines, Sasol and whatnot. That was his flavor. And then now you have Bourget, who's more, I guess, Mechatronics kind of vibe,
Yeah.
flavor. So now that's where you see most of the courses I get towards that because the guy at the top.
So he's adjusted the
Yes, he has.
feel
Even
of things.
the method that he used, the method that he loved, which is the not Nyquist, Q talk to me.
Qualitative
Yes,
feedback.
QFT.
Yeah,
Yes.
QFT, I remember that.
So he
yeah.
came in because he enjoyed that kind of that method. Now he started pushing it more. It's now more in the curriculum. While Bro was more, he was a fundamental back in the day, traditional control. You did all the other things. Now Bourget comes in, and then it's QFT.
Jeez, but that course was a beast, though, eh? That final year control thing. The different
So it matters.
things you're exposed to just in one semester. I
Yes.
mean, each one of those things could be courses on their own.
Yep. So
Yeah,
it matters a lot who's actually in charge of anything.
I think the issue that I had with that course was the fact that each of those people are actually, each of the subject of that control system was actually taught by a different person who had more interest in a thing.
Yes.
And
expertise in
assume-
that thing and love that part
Yeah,
of it.
and assumed it's actually more important for you to learn this thing in this entire course. And that's, if one person was teaching all those 4 or 5 subsections of control, I think it would have been better.
But I think that's why they introduced it in that way, right? Even at the beginning, they tell you, okay, now we're going to cram everything in your final year course because now we want you to go to industry and be exposed to all these things. We've got 4 or 5 guys in our department who do different types of control engineering, and then we're going to expose you to all of them. We have the high-tech guy, which is... what's his name? From the guy from Lesotho, my supervisor. Sweo. Semi, yes, you've got
Yeah.
Semi, who's like, if you try
MPC,
to
model predictive
yes, it's
control.
more real time, and then lag time is very. If you want something like, especially for robotics, something that's fast, right?
Yeah.
And you need to control it. You need those kind of control systems or control algorithms, and then you slow things. Yes, you can look at your Nyquist, your traditional stuff, right? Which is that's where Bro comes in, and then you do multivariables.
What was up with robust stability?
Yes,
like,
yeah.
when I
Then
actually
you've
look
got
back
robust. Remember, the world is not linear.
Yeah.
So robust stabilities was one of it's in the frequency world. Same thing as QFT. It's similar to QFT.
So it's
but not
basically
really.
testing, designing according to edge cases.
Robust, yes.
All right,
It's
so if
like
you-
not Nyquist. What's the other? Is it Nyquist? No, it's not Nyquist. I forgot it is. But it's mainly trying to, if you have a lot of, the world is not perfect.
Yeah.
Control third year is perfect. It's assumed the world
Linear
is perfect.
control, and well,
yes,
fourth
and
year is
then now you
non-linear.
go, it's non-linear. Then you have to deal with non-linear situations. You can deal with them nicely in QFT. You can deal them. You deal with a lot of stuff in the frequency world. That's why QFT.
And
Yeah.
that was difficult for me, bro.
QFT was the easiest thing ever. I didn't like. For me, it was the easiest thing to do.
If you cram it down to a process, yes, it's easy. But if you want to understand it conceptually,
Yeah.
I think that, especially given the limited time you have, I mean, I think
Yeah.
it can get pretty,
But
pretty
it's like
tough for you
it's just
to
the
grasp.
frequency world, and you just need to know. Okay, cool. I'm moving this angle this way because of this reason. Moving up or left, or pretty much that's it. That's why I think that's why Boje loves it, because it's just straightforward.
I think the reason why I hated control, partly to signal systems, was the fact of taking a problem, transforming it in a different world, and then dealing with it in that world. I don't understand how is thinking about root locus and whatever. You know, when you're doing this, you move the poles away. At least it took me some time to understand the root locus method, right? Nyquist was a nightmare with that thing.
And you know how bro used to teach it? Just move it there. Can you see it? Can you see it? Right? It's like, no, we can't see it, nigga. All right. But he was preaching it as if it was so obvious.
So that was a problem for me, and it took me a while to digest the Nyquist problem, right? Understand that space. Now you go to Bourget, where you're dealing with that board. What is this?
The frequency, it's a logarithmic based kind of chart,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Whereas that's
Actually, no.
also
It's
But
similar. It's similar to the one we did in electrical engineering for filters.
yes.
The space. I forgot the frequency space.
Fourier.
Yeah.
No,
No,
not Fourier. For
uh,
building filters.
Ooh.
Is it Bode? No, is it
Bode?
Bode?
It's a
Bode
board.
Bode. The
It's a
Bode
board.
plot. The
Yeah,
Bode plot.
BODE.
Yes, the
Bode
Bode
plot,
plot.
yeah.
Yes, it's similar to that.
It's you actually using board plot to
Yes.
analyze that. So the thing is, all these things stems down to certain fundamentals,
Yep.
and if you are not solid about them, you are screwed.
Yeah.
I was not confident with board plot.
I beg to differ. I think that there's another game you can play, and I think there's the golden narrative, engineers, you learn fundamentals, problem solving. But the reality is that throughout the journey of becoming an engineer, getting your degree, some people obviously pick up certain elements of it, or you wing it in other elements.
Sure.
I won't lie, there's certain courses that I can't honestly say I understood the fundamentals, but I understood enough to know obviously how to pass the exams and how to get enough of what I needed to achieve it. And that itself is a skill,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people can get degrees without having this deep, profound understanding of the fundamentals, which, if we're honest, can take a very long time because there's different levels of understanding and there's different levels of validating your understanding, of which the exam is the one we're basically using to say, yeah, you understood the fundamentals because you
But
happen to study the exact questions.
If you think about it, let me say something stupid. But if you think about it, because of the high pace of varsity, you don't have time to digest things properly. The only people who do is the ones who fail the course and then who are determined to actually understand it. They understand way better than the person who got a 90 first go.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think about it, that's how the real world kind of works. You don't have time to fully digest stuff. You just need to understand enough to just
create value.
execute. Yes.
You to create something and then learn something from the thing that you've just created, and then you
It's a
just
cycle.
continue with that cycle.
Yeah, because the real world isn't academia. Like, it's all about basically taking business needs and creating value.
Yes.
And,
I think
and
for-
most of the time you're not solving things from first principles.
I think for me in varsity, the problem I had was trying to visualize things. if I couldn't see it in my mind, I just had problems to understand it.
Yeah.
You get that? So when you're talking about board, I think concepts like board plot, Nyquist, and control systems were literally things which they told you that to get rid of a overshoot, this is how you do it in root locus, but you don't see the connection on how actually a helicopter moving from here, going there, and then coming back here would connect to the thing you're trying to make on the other side. You just know from faith. So I fundamentally always had a problem with that because I couldn't see it in my mind that how is this connected to the mechanical part of things that actually happens. I was comfortable with mechanical engineering courses because I heard that I could visualize a problem and then I could be able to build it, explain it to somebody else what's going on without the mathematics coming into play. Whereas your signal systems, it was all around signals. Was the second signal systems too was the worst one. I just
that was a juicy course. My God.
Yeah.
That was,
and we didn't have to do it.
No,
but
it wasn't an option.
We actually went.
the thing is, I ended up doing it because of I felt some courses that when I wanted to do networks, I couldn't do networks because they were clashing with other courses.
Okay.
So therefore, I was just had to do this systems too, signal systems too. Even one was difficult for me. Some of the problems in there, I could get to the answers by just visualizing in my head how a thing works, and then I just know what will come out, but not the process. Not writing the. Literally, I remember I wrote this exam where I just provided the graphs as the one answer. Like, okay, if you move this on top of that this way, this is how the area will go up. You know,
Yes.
you kind of see it because you know the area becomes bigger and bigger this way, and then when it passes that, so that's. I wrote it like that, like I just in my mind move this thing on top of this and this is what it will draw.
Sure.
Yes, I got all the answers right, but I kind of got in less than half because I didn't show
Your understanding and
The
Yeah.
whole
the
understanding.
way, the way it's required, I guess.
Yeah, and obviously it requires you to demonstrate to
yeah.
some degree the theory, and I think it hits the nail of now. And it's something you said earlier of why I think mechatronics was hard. You've got mechanical, which is a very you make it easy and say it's the real world, but I think there's a connection you have to make with real world objects and the physics, and then you've got obviously the electrical and the electronics, which is very abstract, and you need to be able to play in those spaces, and usually people aren't able to do both.
Yeah.
Be very abstract and at the same time be very, let's say, concrete in how they rationalize things.
Yep.
And I think, I totally did not like anything mechanical. Not that it was I wouldn't say it was hard to understand. Like if you asked me to build a robot, whatever, you could get down to the physics and get to whatever. But the way they mess with the concepts and the way they test and the level at which, sometimes it's also about how these programs and courses are administered in an institution.
Sure.
They might take an approach where it's all about how many questions you've done. For example, Dynamics 1. That was literally a question about how many problems have you practiced in your spare time. And if you haven't practiced enough, you're screwed.
Yeah.
All right? Whilst you can take another approach which is maybe more conceptually focused. How well have you understood Coriolis? And then we delve on that as opposed to how many Coriolis problems have you seen?
Yeah. Okay.
So it kind of feels like there's also that element of it where how a course is administered. Also,
Dynamics was a page, bro.
yeah, no, that was a real. Yeah.
Sure.
If you have not done a similar problem before and you come across this thing in an exam, you just know this I will tackle when I'm done with all the ones that I think I can answer. Then I can just...
And even if you want to try and go the first principles route, you just don't have time.
Yeah.
So it's designed in a way that unless you've seen it, you're
not gonna...
screwed.
Yeah.
Yes. Then, Tifo. So obviously it seems like you had a problem with control. You hated control. You failed probably because of control, whatever. At what point did you start loving control?
I
Because
want
at some point,
control.
you will control everything.
No, the thing is, it came down to specialization. I think during my exclusion years, I was at home trying to understand what between electrical engineering, electrical and software, electrical mechatronics, electrical and mechanical. What am I? I'm not the best electrical engineer, like your power thing.
Sure.
I did few courses in power. Of course, I don't qualify to be there. In electronics, I could see I'm more of an electronics person than electrical engineers. You know, the electrical and software guys, electrical and computing guys were into software, embedded systems. That's their route. So mechanical and electromechanical, it's kind of obvious. It's just
materials, all that boring shit.
Yeah, it's like mechanical with a flavor of electrical in it, and not just it's not even electronics. It's electrical, high power electrical.
Yeah, it's literally how.
It's literally designed for mining. You can see that. So at some point it came down to, okay, what do mechatronics kind of specialize in? Of course, although at the time I was biased towards electronics, but I knew elsewhere in other universities there's what we call electronics engineering as a program.
Okay, yeah.
So you are like, I'm not really an electronic person. What am I specializing in?
Yes.
Then you start realizing from the courses that you have to do, your control 3, your control 4 tells you actually you are a control engineer.
Yeah.
You know,
UCT mechatronics is pretty much control.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's when I started going back to the fundamentals, going to Bro's book, trying to understand, read each page, trying to think about the equation, even if I didn't have to solve something, just understand what the meaning of the equation, what it means, and I could read it, I could understand it. That's when then, the thing is, I think a lot of those things we fear because we somehow don't understand something, but once you start making those fundamental connections, you start understanding the basics, it allows you to accept the bigger thing about control.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can ask a question to both you guys, what would you say was actually your favorite courses? Or your favorite course
Anything
that you loved the most?
first year Prof. Green course,
Introduction to
electrical engineering.
Okay.
Yeah. That guy broke electrical engineering like nobody's business.
But you know, people had issues with him. Eh?
He
Some
hated
people
that
never
guy.
used to understand.
No.
And the problem is, he had that thing where he couldn't explain and unpack further than his initial.
Yes.
And I remember there was that time
He
where
would get angry.
yes, he'd get angry. People couldn't understand dV by dt. And I remember we didn't learn derivatives, and then I remember people were asking him, and he's like, I don't understand, it's dV by dt. And I'm like, people are like, God, I'll never forget that moment. It's like, nigga. But I mean, but it was a nice course. It was our first introduction into electrical engineering
I think for me,
electronics.
For me, that was
And the 555 circuit, you know,
Yeah.
the timing circuit.
Yeah. For me, that was
Voltage
the best
division.
course, bro. Oh, maybe I was biased towards electronics at the time, but
Yeah.
And what about yours, Bongs? Favorite course at UCT?
Favorite course at UCT? I would say it's control. Yeah, it's control.
The
What
first,
else?
the second, or the third that you guys end up doing?
How many times did we do control? Oh, we did all the controls.
Yeah, till the 5th year, the master's course, right?
Yes, shush. The master's one, I think I enjoyed. Yes.
Yeah, that
actually,
was
that was
for
my
me.
best course ever. Fuck.
For me, it was the only course I've went into class ahead of the lecture.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was not playing catch up.
Yeah. It was literally the two of us.
Yeah.
In the fucking
Yeah, I remember
course.
you guys did the course with Bro.
And if you're playing a catch up, it can be seen on your face, and questions will be directed to you.
It's only you two. Literally.
So you basically have to.
Yes.
So we literally
Is
have.
that like, just on a side note, is that like somehow an interesting, provoking thought about the quality of the learning experience?
Yes.
Yes.
That if it's a lot more closer, you could actually find yourself learning
Yes.
and loving the subject matter a little
Yes.
bit more.
Yeah, you don't even get to hide behind certain people.
No.
You are there. If you don't understand something, if you keep quiet,
It's your rawness. Is
yeah,
right there.
if you keep quiet, later when some concept which builds up on those context comes up, it's obvious that you don't understand. And then the way Brew was treating it is, if you don't understand, he'll ask questions more towards
He'll go
you.
deeper and deeper.
So for us to actually, we were in competition basically.
Yep.
So I had to read to make sure that questions goes to him.
Yep.
Otherwise, if he reads more than me and I don't understand what I've read, I remember we read something where we didn't understand, both of us, and we didn't read, and then the trick was, let's go and ask questions about yesterday's lecture.
In order to basically divert the attention.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because every time we get to the lecture, because I don't know, it was established in the first lecture or something that Bongan is the maths guy. And then, therefore, was just getting along. So every math-related course, or every math-related question, Bongani. No, it's not Bongani, therefore. It was more like, therefore, because, therefore, you're not maths, blah, 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 guy. How do we do this? Bongani, I know you know it. Therefore, how do you do this?
So you literally have to carry your weight, bro.
You have to get your maths. And you know how bro used to say, the maths need to be in your fingertips.
Yes.
All right. And that's actually the thing about control. The maths literally need to be in your fingertips.
Yes. Yeah. So
that
was
actually, control systems is actually a branch in mathematics, not in engineering.
Other varsities call it advanced maths. There's a course for advanced maths. It's control systems essentially.
Yeah, those.
Well, funny enough, for me, my favorite course was embedded systems. It was another elective that I didn't have to do.
Yeah.
And that was the first time you got to see micros, but at a more advanced level. All right. And getting introduced to essentially what it looks like to actually build a product.
Okay.
All right. How you could go from your normal C programs to actually building something like a microwave or like a car processor. And I just enjoyed it, every bit of it. And obviously you enjoy it too when you do well in it. So that for me was probably the most memorable.
Guys,
bro was nice, guys.
Guys,
somehow he understood us. Like, even though I don't know whether we were like at that time, you didn't feel dumb. He understood. Like, even though it was the two of us, we were dumb relative to everybody else. But then because the two of us, it was him alone. Somehow we were the best students ever. I don't know whether he understood us or what.
I think
and you guys were special because you were like in his last few days.
Remember, we talked him into the course.
Yes.
We talked him into teaching the course.
Yeah.
He was not offering the course that year. We just went and asked about it and said, okay, I'll offer the course if there are enough of you. And then time went. We went early in Jan, I think. Time went, and then later we went back to him and I said, okay, I'll take it for you two guys. I think because of the initiative that we pushed into trying to learn more about control, he kind of appreciated that, and then
and then him and for the way became special.
Yeah, because you did your thesis now.
Yeah.
So
I think this was one of those things that you have to find a topic. It becomes difficult, bruh.
No, I enjoyed it. I think it's a thesis that I realized very quickly that, this coursework business, not for me.
Yeah.
Give me a problem and something exciting to explore, and then I will go and I'll learn all the fundamentals I need to get to what I need to. And it kind of encapsulates even how I think about all problems right now. I'm looking at the end first. Once I know that this is where I'm going, then I'll go and gather all my ducks in a row and get to that solution, as opposed to just blindly having to learn concepts.
I
feel like it's
I think doing thesis was the first time I honestly trusted control principles. I didn't trust they doing what they say they were doing.
You had to do them practically.
When I did them with that physical thing, not that
yes, you had a plant multivariate control.
Remember we did it on with a PC helicopter, right? And then you would do your control thing.
I'm not sure anyone ever understood what the fuck they were doing in that thing. You just knew that this code works, right?
So during I didn't even trust that model of a helicopter because It's a software.
yeah.
It could be rigged to do anything. I didn't trust it up until I worked on that thingy, and then I get my first control thingy to do what I kind of wanted, and I was like, wow, this shit actually works.
And using what was that theory? Is it that the derivative? No, the one you used mainly because you did three. You were sampling three control theories.
I remember Matrix. What was the
Yes,
one that
Matrix
was
what?
kicking us?
Yes.
And
So he was comparing three types of multivariable control systems.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
seeing which one's more
which one
efficient.
works.
Yeah.
Yes.
And funny enough, the way I wrote my results was perfect without.
He loved it. Pro loved it.
Pro loved it without like.
Pro loved it.
Dude, it's not like I've had a reference before. Like, okay, this is how you should structure your results. No, I
It
just
just went straight. Like
It kind
was
of made sense too.
Intuitive. Yes. Okay. Cool. I have this. I put it this way. Done. He didn't reference any paper in the sense of this is how a thesis should be written. He just wrote it like a normal person without any academic way of doing things. If
And
you
then-
look at it, it's just straightforward.
Yeah, I remember you guys had short theses. I remember.
Oh, yeah,
right?
no,
yeah,
yeah.
you guys. Had no, I actually did a control to some degree in my thesis
Yes, you
because
did.
I was exploring more the impact of wireless control, what basically the wireless network does to a control system.
I remember when
Alright,
when
and,
I saw your thing, I thought this guy is just tapping into some complex shit.
Yeah, no, I mean it was, but it was
Yeah,
fun.
it
What I
was
loved about it
controversial.
was like just building, and the fact that I tapped into something that was obviously not in the coursework, having to learn about the Zigbee stack,
Yeah.
and actually till this day,
Yeah,
like,
Zigbee,
the things that
I
learned-
heard about it from you, right?
Yeah, because Zigbee is basically in the same family of protocols like
Yeah.
Bluetooth. All right,
It's the
and
mesh,
the
the mesh one.
802.15, your low power, low data rate kind of stuff.
But do you,
use it mainly for mesh.
you see how we go into this program, all of us the same way, but when we come out, we can't kind of have our own specialties. And you're like, you're talking
Yeah.
about Zigbee stuff, networks and shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bonks was a more mathematics man with that control.
Yeah.
You did the car controlling thing, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I remember that
Shit.
problem. Oh my god.
MPC was it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
looking at Kalman
Was,
filters.
Yes.
Oh,
Alright,
fuck.
and,
Yeah, Calvin Field.
The disturbance
Oh,
of the
shit.
thing.
Because Lagrange, it was like so pretty much a combination, not control, but it was Lagrange. Because we see you have your Newton,
Yeah, Newtonian
and then you
mechanics,
can
yeah.
have Lagrangian, and then you can, and then I was doing Kalman filters. I think I did not the EKF. I did the uncertain one, UKF filter. So they're all mathematics based. So I guess for me it was easier. But then the issue is I wanted to add an extra layer. That's where Fabrice came in. The extra layer
Yeah,
was
to model.
to model it in
Yeah.
computer and put it together. So in mathematics, I wrote it down, everything works. But now to create a program or create a 3D object of it, simulate it actually, of the whole thing that I've done, I wanted to add that bit,
But-
which is a sweetener.
But do you guys remember certain things we were expected to do but not taught before? Like your MATLAB, you were expected to use MATLAB. There wasn't a
yeah,
course for
shucks.
mechatronics.
Yeah, you had to pick it up on your own.
Yes.
So,
but then
and
mechanical
the
engineers,
SolidWorks.
They had a course for that.
Mechanical and electrical
even the
engineers
electrical
had
guys had a course
Oh,
for it.
yes.
SolidWorks. We had to learn it on our own. Mechanical guys had
There was
it.
a course for
I
it.
remember.
Okay, but just FYI, now I'm going to be exposing myself. But if later on, when you do the drawing course, they include SolidWorks and 3D and stuff like that more. And the cool thing is they also include like PCB design through Altium, something that was
Oh.
not there in the initial program. So it's
Okay.
generally CAD. So SolidWorks, whatever, obviously, and obviously PCB design is also considered CAD, aka computer aided design.
Oh yeah.
So that was actually cool.
I had
found
to
that-
design a PCB,
Yep.
right?
You see
Yeah,
the
I
PCB
found that
that
useful.
I want to go there. There's I think when last did I go there? Was it 20? I forgot. Like those guys, they were busy with like there's a certain thing that they for designed. They're using it in the white lab. They even mass produced it.
Control lab, yeah.
in the
That was my
control lab.
VEC work.
Yes, they mass.
I was doing that
produced it.
VEC work.
Everybody's using
I was
it.
doing
What
that.
did you design?
Where are those pictures for this man?
You know that thing, the thing that we use for control systems in the control lab to control the, what do you call it, the helicopter.
Yeah.
So therefore created a digital version of it.
Oh, instead of an analog knob, you
Yes,
basically.
he created like a,
Okay, that's dope.
yeah, he
That
created
is so
that
dope, dude.
in
Yeah.
electronics.
That was my work, and we had to manufacture, I think, 16 of those things.
Yep.
And then they went, when they come back, and then I realized, fuck, there's a issue with the connection.
Yeah.
I had to bring some, use wires, you know. That was interesting,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah,
So
no, I
you
also
did
had to design, or aspire to design a whole board in my thesis. But in the end, the manufacturer said they couldn't. It was so fucked up, actually. They accepted the design, and later on they said that
said
they
it's
couldn't.
not-
They couldn't
yeah.
solder. They don't have the machinery to basically solder the IC, which obviously is like a little bit small. But yeah, I still have the board. Actually, I still have it here somewhere. I was checking it out the other day.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, yeah, no, that's fun times actually. Which kind of begs the question then. How now? That's obviously university. Coming from this mechatronics background, how is it that you guys have found yourselves in software professionally?
I guess money and circumstances. I guess overall, that's the South African theme. Money. You wanted to do something. Obviously, in summary, that's it. We
Yeah.
can go on another 30-minute for our talk on how I got there, but then overall is that money.
Money and circumstance.
Yeah.
And yourself, therefore?
Mine was, yeah, well, to be honest, because I went through engineering, I started realizing I'm not doing what I was expecting that I should be doing. In a sense that, like anything that you did undergrad was more complex than anything you would do on the job. Because in this world, you used a ready-made solution to make up solutions.
Sure.
And then you realize it's not touching that deeper part of feeling. Dude, a BSc program teaches you to make things, right? It teaches you fundamentals that you can build up on and then build certain things. But in the world that you're working on, you already have solutions. You just taking those solutions, bringing them together to make something. And it's interesting in the early days of doing that. It's fun because it's something that you've never done before. It feels good that you're bringing all the solution into life. But with time coming, as time goes by, you realize that I'm doing the same thing. There's not much of a challenge. Whereas software, on the other hand, it's always a custom solution. We can say you have the building blocks, which is your programming language, your frameworks, but they aren't as higher on the higher abstraction like in electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. They are higher than you creating your own language, but you still have enough of challenges that you get to solve with these basics. For me, it was partly that, but mostly the money. I would have preferred to have done work for a company where I do the entire mechatronics. I work as a software engineer. I worked as this. So in the South African context, you have to trade off between all those things. You either become a mechanical engineer, a control systems guy, electrical engineer, or a software guy. So you have to choose one of those things. It's in fewer instances where you get there, you become...
You can do all those elements. Yeah.
So looking at amongst the choices you have to make, electrical is already in a maturity stage in South Africa. Electrical, mechanical, all those traditional engineers are up there.
You're not gonna design anything, pretty much.
Yeah, you're not gonna come up with anything new, right?
Yeah.
Software, it's the one with a lot of I can apply my mind type of,
a lot
and
more
fortunately,
creativity and design and
and fortunately, it's the one that's we cannot deny it. That's paying more, bruh. You are incentivized to actually become a software developer, and That's why I think a lot of electrical engineers are software developers today.
Yeah, I guess in electrical, obviously, we always had that. You have your hardcore power kind of
Yeah.
like guys who I think most of them are probably still in the traditional electrical, specializing in transformers and all the likes. And then you have obviously your electronics guys, which probably are moving more towards software. All right. And I guess in my case,
Most of the mechatronics guys, they're in software, if not
Yeah.
all of them.
yeah, all of pretty much. Well, I'm still in control to some degree, but it's more embedded system.
Yeah.
So yeah, not fully out of the engineering hole, which maybe leads to an interesting question. All right, if you guys still have the muscle, all right, is in the software space, how can we break down all the different disciplines that exist in the software industry, and maybe unpack a little bit what are the different basic issues and things, the pros and cons of those spaces. So, for example, we know that you've got.
Guys, can we have this session maybe next time? Because I think we are after the cafe right now, right?
Oh yeah, we're beyond. Oh my God, it's 9:30. All right. Yeah, and so far it's 2 hours 10.
Wow. Shucks, for breeze.
2 hours 10.
Why didn't you stop us?
No, because what I noticed very quickly is that, like, oh my God, we dwelled so much on this journey. I mean, you can say only after like an hour did you stop the journey.
I
of
thought you
like,
were gonna cut it because what we did is we start on how we go to software,
Yeah.
but then we talked more about our individual journey on mechatronics.
And,
I thought
yeah,
you were gonna
coming-
keep it at that level and not expand.
Yeah.
Well, once you started going back to the original question, I was like, "Fuck, this is gonna be a long one."
Yeah, no, I mean, because what I obviously is there was that issue of like,
Yes,
okay,
because
since
I think we spent like an hour just talking about how did we get into
I
mechatronics.
remember you did that cool shit where you integrated, you built a quadcopter in.
Yeah, because I was actually planning on doing my masters. Actually, I'd started because remember Ginsberg let me start, so I was doing my literature review and everything.
But with didn't that with Ginsberg you were doing the hardware thing?
Yes, because remember I did my thesis with him, and when I was done, he liked what I was doing, and then he pretty much let me start master stuff. So that's when I was basically doing things like VHDL. He gave me an FPGA
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
some
remember
tasks
that.
to do, and then once I've got that up and going, show it to him.
No, I was talking about you built a model of a quadcopter on the SolidWorks and then integrated it with the.
Oh yes, that was part of. There was actually a platform, not a platform, but it was a simulating plugin called Simscape, where you can basically take a 3D model from any CAD program, and you can basically integrate physics-like modules onto them. So I could integrate, for example, a torque mechanism on attach it to a structure, and then so what will happen is that as I let's say simulate a torque of a certain amount, then it would physically also turn the actual physical structure. It was so unique. It was so interesting. That's why sometimes I do regret actually leaving work. I do feel like if I'd stayed, the amount of energy and the drive I had at the time, I probably would have come up with some interesting stuff. Because the goal then was to try and investigate this problem of how the difference in communication protocols influence the control. And building what I called at the time an adaptive wireless control system. So that, and then if you have multiple drones, and let's say you have more interference on nodes, they can, because remember then it was also to be built on the whole software-defined radio thing, which I felt like, at the time it felt like such a revelation. I don't know why it hasn't picked up, but the idea that, every communication protocol has a physical layer. So when it comes to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, there's actually a physical oscillator that's generating that let's say 2.4 gigahertz, and then there's certain other, just above the physical layer, you've got certain other things that manage collision detection, whatever. So the whole goal was to basically allow a distributed control system to be able to adapt its communication protocol in order to achieve a better control situation. So for example, in let's say low battery situations, the quadcopters could switch to something like a more lower rate Zigbee thing, and then conserve power. And then where they need more efficiency, they can go to something like more high speed. That at least was the idea. And I got SKA funding for it. I even got NRA funding.
Yeah.
And I think it was either Telkom or Vodacom, I remember, that were also keen on funding. So I was very excited about that, eh? You know, I felt like that was what I wanted to do, and
then Givela happened.
yeah, Givela happened. And it's still happening.